Martial law is coming to a town near you. Get ready for Gridex II, the grid security exercise. It's a multinational terror drill, and it's scheduled to take place in the coming months. Supposedly, it aims at assessing, testing, and validating vital infrastructure resources should they come under an unlikely cyber attack. It's scheduled for November in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. So get ready for martial law. They can put that in place right away. And remember, Janet Napolitano said earlier this year that it's not a matter of if, but when it happens. And it's already happened in Venezuela when it froze transportation, business, and overall communication in that area. In FEMA Region 3, they're preparing for something of a large magnitude, putting out bids for contractors, demanding delivery in under 48 hours. Now, these items include various things such as clothing, 100,000 scrub pants and shirts, sweatshirts, 6 million cotton blankets, all to be ordered by October 1st, 2013. And the Center for Disease Control ordered $11 million worth of antibiotics. Remember, the DHS earlier this year had been buying up billions of rounds of ammo, and the IRS ramped up with AR-15s, FEMA buying millions of MREs, and they've moved Coast Guard training from their normal training area to Region 3. West Virginia has already had a taste of the police state during the Boy Scouts Jamboree, as citizens witnessed foreign troops on the ground, snipers, Blackhawks, and even notices from health services warning of airborne viruses. And in Maryland, they recently showcased their military-style vehicles on the freeway during a funeral. Martial law is coming.
Other police action may include actual physical removal, the use of riot control agents and/or less lethal munitions, which could cause risk of injury to those who remain.
Martial law is coming, but don't worry, your government is preparing to save you. I'm Gigi Arnetta with this InfoWars Nightly News Report.
A fireball blazing across power lines just overhead, fueled by an electrical surge, strengthening and exploding.
What we saw was this fireball barreling down the power lines and emanating an extreme amount of heat that essentially forced us back inside because it was so hot.
Look again as the surge zips dangerously close. Griffiths consumed with worry about his 2 children sleeping inside.
I thought the house was going to explode.
There's been no official explanation of what triggered the fireball, but some experts speculate lightning started it and that basic safety mechanisms meant to shut it down failed. Susan Solney, ABC News, New York.
It is difficult, perhaps, for the new generation since World War II, accustomed to the myriad lights of their main streets, to realize that once the bright glow was dimmed, that in order to conserve coal, electricity, and manpower, while the final mighty effort was being made for total victory, it became necessary to turn the lights down low. The nation already had become attuned to self-imposed darkness through extensive blackout drills, which began before the war and continued through the grim days when civil defense became vital to the home front. to teach civilians how to protect themselves and their families in event of enemy attack. Americans went from temporary blackout to the brownout to save an estimated 2 million tons of coal annually. Next, the midnight curfew, which went into effect February 26, 1945. The government order concerned principally nightclubs, sports arenas, theaters, saloons, bars, dance halls, roadhouses. But cooperation came from every source, from all who would show their patriotism while war communiques told of American troops outside Cologne, Superforts bombing Tokyo, MacArthur's men fighting east of Manila, and war plant production at an all-time peak. Air raid drills, dim-outs, curfew. It was a time for serious observance of the regulations which had been set up just in case Americans should be exposed to the terror from the sky so familiar to populations overseas. Equally important was conserving materials upon which the war effort depended. To live for a while in darkness was preferred by all who fell under the shadow of a great war of survival. VE Day was the occasion for easing controls, and Americans rejoiced in the bright glow of a nation which could see lights once more.
Tonight's massive power failure in the East. Here is NBC News Washington correspondent Robert Abernethy.
Good evening. The northeastern United States tonight suffered its worst electric power failure in history. In the next few minutes, we hope to tell you in detail what happened and to pass on what little is known about why it happened. First, what happened? Just before 5:30 tonight, at 5:28 in New York and 5:21 in Boston, at the height of the rush hour, the lights went out in those cities and in most of the Northeast. Perhaps 30 million people in approximately 80,000 square miles were affected. There were massive traffic jams and confusion, especially at train stations. Thousands of people were trapped in darkened elevators. The New York City Transit Authority estimated that 800,000 people were underground in subways when the train slowed to a stop in the dark. Hospitals switched to emergency power. Candles and flashlights were at a premium. In New York, surgeons at St. Vincent's Hospital were in the midst of brain surgery when the hospital's emergency power plant failed. Police rushed an emergency generator to the hospital, and the operation was completed. Airplanes could not land at New York's major airports because of the lack of light and signals on the ground. They were forced to circle, flew on to Philadelphia and Newark, or later landed at their destinations, helped in by moonlight. Our company there, Consolidated Edison, now says it probably won't begin to come back until perhaps 3 a.m. And even then, there's doubt about whether capacity can be built up enough to handle the big early morning load. In New York City and other cities, there have been reports of looting. Police ordered anti-aircraft searchlights set up to flood Grand Central Station, Times Square, and other parts of New York, moving from building to building at a 45-degree angle, trying to spot any possible looters. At the height of the blackout in Boston, a riot broke out at the Massachusetts State Prison in Walpole, nearby. Between 200 and 300 inmates, more than half the population, broke out of their cells in the maximum security section of the prison and roamed the cell blocks, smashing windows, tables, and chairs. State troopers ringed the prison, waited, eventually used tear gas to try to get the men back in their cells. Governor John Volpe of Massachusetts ordered all National Guardsmen to report to their headquarters. Governor Nelson Rockefeller of New York ordered all National Guard units in his state on the alert. Now a report has just come in from the scene. Here is NBC's Frank McGee in New York.
Parts of northern New Jersey and the entire state of Massachusetts were plunged into utter darkness. For hours, millions of people in one of the most densely populated and civilized regions of the world were totally without electricity. For those hours, life was a confusion for some, a complete stillness in life for others. Federal, state, and municipal officials were shocked by the sudden blackout. In Johnson City, Texas, President Johnson ordered an immediate investigation into the power failure. He directed the Federal Power Commission to conduct the investigation, supported by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Defense, and other federal agencies. One major significance is that the power failure may indicate that the nation's power supplies may be extremely vulnerable to nuclear attack. Just last year, the Federal Power Commission reached the conclusion that it was unlikely that oil power could be cut off in any area, even under nuclear attack. We're reaching you from New York under, as you can see, exceedingly strange conditions. This is an emergency arrangement. We're operating with mobile equipment and operating from even using candles as a light supply. In New York City, Governor Nelson Rockefeller has ordered local National Guard units to their armories, and the armories have been open to some of the several 100,000 stranded passengers in New York. We can, as you can imagine, had thousands and thousands of people stranded in the subways and in elevators. So far, there have been no deaths attributed to the blackout.
For a report on the federal government's role in trying to offset the effects of the power failure, especially on the national security aspects, here is NBC's Pentagon correspondent, Peter Hackus.
Within a matter of minutes, the Northeast blackout situation was being discussed in the office of Buford Ellington, who directs the government's Office of Emergency Planning, located next door to the White House. Ellington, in turn, was on a tie line with the Texas White House. President Johnson had first learned of the situation a few moments before, listening to a newscast while he was driving in his car. As the seriousness of the problem became apparent this evening, the president ordered the Federal Power Commission a thorough investigation. The president ordered the FBI.
If some of this, or even all of it, appears a bit ragged to you, I'm sure you'll understand. We here in New York are operating under extremely difficult conditions, even primitive conditions. We're using candles for part of our lighting system, and we have a tiny little camera here that's not normally pressed into service for situations like these. Many of the bars earlier in the evening were said to be closing down. Whether this was a voluntary gesture or whether the police requested it, we do not yet know for sure. Thousands, literally thousands of people have been stranded in New York, and hotel rooms are at a premium. There has been a brisk business in the sale of candles and flashlights, and there have been reports that some stores have increased the price of candles while others have cut them. But New York is indeed in darkness tonight.
In the area, traffic is moving, or was earlier in the evening, moving with remarkable regularity. There were policemen stationed on every corner, and of course the street lights were out. And the policemen did their best, and they kept it moving pretty well. And the buses, of course, were jammed, and the taxi cabs at that hour usually vanish, and there weren't very many of them tonight. A few of them, the ones that were operating, had their off-duty signs on, and they had to take quite a bit of abuse from their prospective passengers, and occasionally a policeman would stop the off-duty taxis and force them to take people. People were sharing taxis, and also some of the bolder souls, perhaps those with the longest walk home, stop private cars and ask for rides. It's quite a ways from Times Square to the Bronx or Queens or Brooklyn, and a few of the drivers of private cars were willing to help at least a few people. On Fifth Avenue, it was a little bit different story. Traffic there was hopelessly jammed. It took you about a half an hour to move 4 or 5 blocks.
2.5 days tomorrow. He'll be there. No, I don't care about that.
What the hell was going on?
For some reason or other, there was a power failure in northern New York or southern Canada that cascaded down through the system.
The U.S. set up its honor system. Hydro One said, not here. PMO's office tonight says, might have been a fire at the Niagara Mohawk Power Station on the New York side that started a cascading catastrophe that cut power to millions. People poured out of offices and stores and restaurants. Those who weren't stuck in elevators were left to walk 50 stories down the streets for pedestrians and then commuters. As you can see, subways is very hot, scary day. By 9 p.m. or so, you were watching us again in Pittsburgh, western Niagara region, Ottawa, and Canada.
Hot dog man is very popular. So is the ice cream truck. I'm going to try and get to this intersection without getting run over. Maybe I should put my light on. Dead streetcars everywhere. Something going on. Young and Queen. Traffic moving along. Brinks truck not doing anything.